talk for just a few minutes about something that Bob said too, because he mentioned that a reporter asked him, and I happened to hear the response. He said, "What's it like to be a part of the greatest generation?" And Bob said, no. He said, "That torch has been passed. It's the young men and women who are being deployed today. They are the greatest generation." And I'm proud of the fact that Bob worked so hard to build that World War II memorial. Have we got any World War II veterans here today? Just raise your hands. Okay, we have a wonderful, thank you so much. I just have to share, when Bob was working on building that memorial, raising the funds for it, there was a group called Save the Mall, who said, "Do not put that memorial on the mall. That's going to ruin the mall to have another memorial on the mall." I said, "Bob, get every veterans group to march on Washington when they have that hearing, because it was the men and women of World War II who saved the mall. We wouldn't have any mall if it hadn't been for what you did for us." And I just want to say, for all of those who've served in wars, and for those who've sacrificed, the families, how much we appreciate you and appreciate your service to this country. Now, being on the Armed Services Committee, I've tried to have as a special focus of mine helping the families of those when they're separated. And you know, it's hard to believe that there's some who would take advantage of young men and women when they don't have a lot of financial knowledge, they're teenagers, and they need to borrow some money when one of them's going overseas with the military. And this predatory lending was something that was of great concern to me, because they knew, some of these folks, that there was a guaranteed source of income on a certain day. And so we went to work and we got legislation passed that would address that issue. Then there's a guy just down the road in New Bern, not so far away, named Ed Edmondson. Ed came to my office and he said, "Senator Dole, I just want to tell you that my son is just back from Iraq and he has some serious head injuries. And they tell me he'll be in a state of vegetation the rest of his life." And he said, "I have quit my job in New Bern, and I'm in Chicago by his bedside. And I am encouraging him, I'm inspiring him, I'm cheerleading, I'm working with the doctors and nurses. I'm not going to let that happen." And the bottom line is, with a little help, Eric Edmondson of New Bern, North Carolina, walked out of that hospital. He walked out. Now that was an inspiration for legislation. And we were able to get it passed to give a parent or a spouse or a child 6 months leave from through the Family and Medical Leave Act to sit at the bedside and encourage a person who has severe injuries. And I'm so proud that that is law now, because we've got to do everything we can for these young men and women who are doing so much for us. So that's why it's such a privilege to serve on this committee. And I just want to talk with you a bit about where we are in terms of the economy. First of all, I hope you all are happy with the tobacco quota buyout. I think that's worked out well. It's infused about $4 billion, or it will eventually, into North Carolina. We also got the Southeast Regional Commission into the Farm Bill this year. And that's going to help the southeastern part of the state, where there are areas that do not have an economy or an economic base yet on which to build. It's going to provide help, just like the Appalachian Regional Commission. So I'm pleased about that. I'm also pleased we were able to get Johnston County as one of 5 counties to be, it's extra funding from the federal government to fight drugs. It's called the high intensity drug issue. And what it does basically with these 5 counties is provide additional funds so that our law enforcement officers won't have to spend time doing administrative work when they need to be out doing other work. So you are one of the 5 counties included in that, what they call HIDA. Now, let me talk for a few, thank you. We went to the director of the Drug Enforcement Policy Office to try to get that worked out, and I'm so glad that it came through. Let's talk for a moment about the economy, where we go from here. Because most definitely, you know, what's happening right now with the mortgage problems, the credit problems, a lot of that could have been prevented. 3 of us had legislation back in 2003 that would have put Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac under a world-class regulator. A regulator who could have cut off all of these excesses, who could have brought them under control. And as you know, there were financial accounting scandals and really just an incredible amount of conduct that was inappropriate. So we were 3 people on the banking committee fighting very hard to get that in 2003. Ultimately, $100 million was put into lobbying against our legislation by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, trying to stop that legislation from going through. $100 million. Well, ultimately, we got the legislation passed in July of this year, just in time to put them into a conservatorship. But ladies and gentlemen, and by the way, they don't do any more lobbying now. That conservator said, that's it, no more lobbying for you. But I think that leadership is a matter of trying to see problems, potential problems that may be coming up, and addressing them. And we tried very hard to get that legislation through. And it was our friends across the aisle who blocked it for so long. And we could see that there was a potential that this was going to happen. So I hope that what they're, you know, I was against the bailout. I have to tell you, I voted against the bailout. I talked to our bankers all over North Carolina, and I could not believe, here we were going to put $700 billion into trying to bail out Wall Street. I'm concerned about Main Street, what we're going to do to get the credit flowing for Main Street. And then they put an extra $150 billion onto that to try to sweeten it enough that the House of Representatives would pass it. And it worked. $850 billion. So, you know, John Allison of BB&T, I thought, had some great ideas. He said, you know, what we could do is to provide immediately a significant tax credit for people buying a house. We could certainly have a loan guarantee program, but a market-based approach instead of all of this federal government moving in to buy up bad assets out of Wall Street. So, indeed, this is an issue that's going to be with us for a while. We're going to have all sorts of hearings, I'm sure, on the banking committee looking at the entire financial regulatory picture and how to change things and what's going to be necessary. But Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are right in the middle of all of this. And if our legislation could have gotten through quicker, without all that $100 million being spent to lobby against it, I think we could have avoided a lot of what's going on now. Now, another thing, we need a comprehensive energy policy in this country, and we need it now. Amen. Now. Amen. Once again, I'm trying to play a leadership role. I think this is important that we launch it. In fact, I'd like to have seen it launched before the election recess. But I hope in the lame duck session after the election, we can get this off the ground. I never thought I'd find myself in a gang. In fact, I have legislation with Dianne Feinstein that would say, you know, more penalties on gang members, more money for witness protection programs and all of that. But I am in a gang of 20. And there are 10 Republicans and 10 Democrats. And what we're trying to do is build the support to get a comprehensive energy policy off the ground right now. I am for drilling. I think we've got to drill. We've got to drill. And for the life of me, I can't, if anybody can give me one reason why you wouldn't drill up in Alaska, in the ANWR area, I mean, what reason is there? It would be 1 million barrels a day coming in now, and Bill Clinton had vetoed the legislation that was passed when my husband was in the Senate. That's right. And it's like 2,000 acres out of 19 million acres, and 600,000 jobs. Jobs, 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 that's what it's all about. If we start drilling, we're going to produce more jobs. If we start trying to bring that oil shale from the Rocky Mountains up, that would give us 3 times the reserves of Saudi Arabia, folks, and more jobs. And you know, I mean, think about it, being 60% dependent on Ahmadinejad of Iran and Putin of Russia and Chavez of Venezuela. This isn't just an economic matter, it is a national security issue, and we've got to deal with it.